So you see the sign? Is the physical world all there is? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm kind of agnostic, so my assumption right now is the physical world is all that we know,
Gotcha.
but I don't know if that's all there is.
So you're personally agnostic, and you're inclined to think the answer to this question is yes, physical world's all there is.
Well, that's all we know.
Oh, that's all we know. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I don't know if we can prove whether or not there's anything more than the physical world.
Okay. Gotcha. And you mentioned that you're a philosophy minor.
Yes.
So you're studying kinesiology right now, but philosophy minor. Shared that before we came on here. Have you had a chance to study philosophy of mind at all?
Maybe. Can you give me an example?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of issues that are discussed in philosophy of mind, but I personally think that there are good philosophical reasons for thinking that the physical world isn't actually all there is. I'd be curious to hear what your reaction is to it, I guess. I'm assuming that as a philosophy now you're probably familiar with the law of identity.
The law of it, not actually.
Okay, so that if I were to ask you, Ethan, how do you know that the microphone is different from me? How would you answer that question? That these aren't these aren't identical. These aren't
so I can use
one and the same object.
Yeah, I can use my sense data and interpret the microphone as being different from you. Using, I guess, my reasoning and the evidence that I have gathered from knowing what a microphone is and what a person is.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, so you see there's two different objects here, right?
Yeah.
Clearly they're not one and the same thing.
Yeah.
And you can tell that even if you didn't see these, if you were just asking me questions about it, you would find out that there's a lot of differences between these objects. The weight's different, the size is different, the shape's different. They have different purposes, they're designed for different things, they have different capacities, they can do different things, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you couldn't physically see these, you would know that when I refer to the microphone and refer to Kirk, they're clearly not the same object.
Yeah.
Because there are things that are true of Kirk that aren't true of the microphone. There are differences, right, between them.
Yeah.
But then if I were to ask you, is Kirk the same object as the person who's talking to you right now? The answer to that would be yes, right? There's nothing true of Kirk that's not true of the person talking to you. And if you were to ask questions like, is the person talking to me, does he weigh 170 pounds? And if the answer to that's yes, then that means Kirk must also weigh 170 pounds, right?
Yeah, that's deductive reasoning, basically. Right?
Exactly, right? Yeah. That if they're same thing, they're going to have all the same properties. Or anything that's true of one is also going to be true of the other.
Yes.
If they're referring to the same object.
Okay.
All right, great.
I follow along.
Yeah. So that's all we need to agree on, because it's really amazing once you start to think about it, man. I think personally, and I'd really be interested in what your reaction is. I think once we look inside ourselves, it's pretty hard to deny that there's more to the world, there's more to reality than just the physical. Just take your conscious states, for example. Call to mind right now something that you were thinking of earlier today.
Okay.
What's something you were thinking of earlier today? Maybe imagining or thinking about?
Breakfast.
Okay. Yeah. So now pull that up into your mind again.
Yeah.
Got it there.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to ask you, Ethan, that conscious state, that thought that you're having right now, how much does it weigh?
The actual breakfast, or does the thought itself?
That mental state, yeah, that thought that you're having.
I would say it doesn't have a physical weight.
Right.
It's just an idea.
Yeah. And how about its size? How big is it in terms of length and width, height, in inches?
I can't quantify the actual thought itself, but I can imagine the image.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't. But the thought itself, I wouldn't be able to quantify it into a size. No.
For sure, man. Yeah. You can't describe it in terms of physical dimensions, right?
Yeah.
And what about its shape? What kind of physical shape does it have? Spherical, rectangular?
It doesn't occupy any shape besides just my own imagination, but I can only imagine an image, I guess, of the thing itself, but not the thought itself is just within my consciousness.
Yeah, it's great, man. Yeah, so that mental state doesn't have a physical shape, it doesn't have a physical size, it doesn't have physical weight. Where do you think it's physically located?
Well, this is a topic in psychology that's not really sussed out yet, because there's a lot of different theories of where the actual location of your consciousness is. It's not. We don't know yet. I would say that's my best answer. Is we don't really know where it's located. I mean, we do know how like the brain operates. It's like neural impulses, basically, like neurotransmitters and action potentials, like traveling across your brain, electrical signals, basically, and then you interpret that in your brain as consciousness. But we don't know exactly where that actual like consciousness is located in the brain.
Okay. Yeah. So we don't know where consciousness is physically located, but we do know that there's a lot of brain activity that seems to be clearly connected to the conscious states that we have, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's impossible to deny that the activity in our brains, our brain states, have a very consistent correlation to our mental states, right? You know, when we're thinking about something, you can probably observe similar brain activity each time you're thinking about that, or each time you're feeling the same thing, having the same sensation, right?
Yeah. I mean, there is like different regions in the brain are activated depending on what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And, like different associations. You can kind of detect that if you do like an MRI or whatever brain scan you use for that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But the actual location of consciousness, we can't really, we don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think if you're just considering that mental state you were having a few seconds ago of that thought, thinking of breakfast, I don't think that mental state is physically located like I don't think you could physically locate it in space. Say this is the exact spot where this thought exists.
Yeah,
right?
I would say the thought is just our interpretation of all these different signals going on. But yeah, but there's no, but that doesn't. I don't know if this actually proves that there's anything beyond the physical world.
Sure.
Because all this is really saying is we can interpret the physical world. We can interpret something outside the physical world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. There's something outside the physical world. Like it just we can from this we can basically say that there's an illusion that there's something outside of the physical world, but we don't really know where it's coming from.
Okay.
But I don't know if that doesn't really prove that that illusion is real.
I think I see what you're saying.
So I guess what I'm getting at is you can make the point that consciousness might be an illusion, that it feels very real to us because we have all these signals that make our experiences feel real. But there's no way that we can prove that that experience itself is outside of the physical world.
Interesting. Okay. So our conscious states, it might seem like it's something non-physical, but we can't prove that.
Yes.
In your view. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So all of those differences that we were just talking about, or all not differences right now, I guess, but all those things that we were just talking about. You know, when we look inside and we consider our mental states, like our thoughts. You know, our thoughts don't seem, our mental states don't seem to have weight. They don't seem to have shape. They don't seem to have a physical size. Perhaps they don't even have a physical location. Like it's hard to imagine how you would pinpoint where in space that thought exists.
Yes.
Right? The reason why that's important is because physical states generally have those things.
Yes.
They're generally characterized by weight and shape and size and location.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to say that our conscious states are something physical, and specifically that they're identical with our brains, right, with whatever, whatever the brain state is that's correlated with that, then there can't be differences between the conscious state and the physical state. Right? If I'm going to say that the microphone and Kirk are ultimately referring to the same object, then there can't be differences between what the microphone is and what Kirk is. Anything true of the microphone has to be true of Kirk if they're ultimately one the same thing. We're going to say that our mental states are ultimately one the same thing as our brain states. Everything true of our mental states has to be true of our brain states. The problem is, it seems like there are many things that are true of our brain states that are not true of our mental states. Our brain states have weight and shape and size and location, but our mental states don't, right?
Yeah.
Your reaction to that? First of all, did I explain that clearly? That makes sense?
My thoughts are a little scattered now, so...
No worries, dude. Sorry. This is actually one of the first times I'm trying out this line of reasoning with people, so I'm not super good at explaining it either. So just, if something's unclear, you can let me know. So
the claim is that because our...
mental states.
Our mental states are the...
Have differences from our physical states.
Therefore,
they're not ultimately the same.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. Like, yeah.
So then that means that thought you were having at breakfast, that conscious state, is not ultimately one and the same thing as the activity going on in your brain state.
Yeah,
because your brain state has many physical characteristics that conscious state just doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, even though they're not one and the same, I don't think that necessarily proves that it's something outside of the material world. Because,
I gotcha.
Because that's still our interpretation of a brain state would be our mental state. But even though they're not the same thing, I see what you mean, they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that your interpretation is outside of the physical world. It just feels like it could be outside of the physical world.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's like
actual proof.
Actual proof, yeah.
For sure.
Like
yeah.
a lot of things can feel a certain way, but that doesn't really prove it to be true. Like, that's my line of reasoning, I guess.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, man. I mean, if we acknowledge that our conscious states don't have weight and shape and size and location, the stuff we talked about, many physical states have those things. Like generally, physical states have those kind of characteristics, right?
I'll give you an example, actually. If you take pain, for example, right?
Yeah, sensation of pain.
The sensation of pain, that would be let's see. That is a physical state.
Okay.
Wait, let me try to think about this.
Yeah, take your time.
The sensation of pain. It's something that we experience, even if you can't. Shoot, I don't know where I was going with that. I was trying to.
There are many different kinds of mental states. You can talk about thoughts. You can talk about beliefs. You can talk about desires. You can talk about sensations, like the sensation of having a pain.
Yeah.
You know, that sensation. You can ask the same questions. How much does that sensation weigh? What is its shape?
Yeah, it doesn't have.
What is its physical dimensions?
Yeah, but
right? It's nonsensical to talk about it like that.
Yeah, but just because it doesn't have physical dimensions, I don't know if that means it exists outside the physical world. I think that just means we experience it within the physical world, but it's not. We experience it within the physical world while seeming to have like a condition outside of the physical world. Like that's just how we interpret it.
Gotcha. So even though it seems like it has no weight, no shape, no size, etc., it might not actually be that way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That maybe our thoughts do have weight? Maybe they do have physical dimensions? Is that?
No, they don't. I guess. Yeah, I see what you mean. Actually, yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't have physical dimensions. It is outside of the physical world.
It's at least very different than many physical states.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah,
that do have those kind of characteristics, right?
Yeah, I can concede that. Yeah.
And it's cool because philosophers of mind have noticed that there's more differences than just that. It's not just that mental states are very difficult to describe using physical language, even though they are. If you were to ask yourself, like, how do you know that that's what you're thinking of? How did you know that you were thinking of breakfast a few minutes ago?
Oh, how did I know? Breakfast? Like I imagined it. I don't know.
Well, you're just like, you were aware of it, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, it's just you didn't you just know it because you can look inside and see it there, right?
Yeah.
You know it by introspection.
Yeah.
Now the reason why that's significant is because physical states and physical objects are publicly accessible.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, like this microphone. If there's something you want to know about this microphone, any way you have of knowing about it, everybody else has of knowing about it too.
Yeah.
You can come and find out its weight by putting it on a scale. You can measure it. Its length like this. You can test out to see how well it works, right?
Yeah.
And any other person here on campus can come up and do the exact same thing and know the exact same things about it in the exact same way.
Yeah.
But our mental states aren't like that.
Yeah.
Our mental states are not publicly accessible.
Yeah.
You have special private access to them, right? You can know them by introspection. But I can't know your mental states by introspection. I might be able to know them if you tell me about them.
Yeah.
Or maybe if I hook you up to a machine and I'm measuring all of your brain activity and I've been able to connect certain brain activity with certain thoughts that you have, I might be able to know it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I can't know it the same way that you know it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But physical things aren't like that. Physical things are publicly accessible in the sense that anything any person can know about it, any other person can know about it in the same way, right?
Okay.
Mental states are not. That's another big difference.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
What's your reaction?
Okay, I think I'm following like what you mean by.
It's pretty cool when you start thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, like I guess I would agree. Yeah, there are things outside of our physical world.
Like your own consciousness.
Yeah, but I don't. I'm still like very skeptical right now.
No worries, bro.
It's like my I guess I have like cognitive dissonance. I'm trying to like piece this together in my mind.
No worries.
I guess in a way, I would argue that like sociological concepts are also outside of the physical world.
Okay.
For example, like if we assign, if we're gonna use the same example, like if I'm gonna assign this to be a microphone, the idea that it's a microphone is outside the physical world. Like there's no actual reason why it should be called a microphone. It's just something that everyone's collectively decided it's going to be called. So I guess sociological, from the same perspective, I would say like sociological concepts are within our mind.
Okay.
So I guess that's an example that I can think of that I would like.
Yeah.
I'd probably agree with. Yeah.
So maybe concepts, maybe abstract objects if they exist.
Yeah. It's like words. Words are they don't. Even though we can like see like letters and stuff. At one point, I guess they didn't exist in the physical world. They might have all been within people's heads.
Okay.
So that's not. Yeah, I guess that's a way that concepts, words, language can exist outside the physical world.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I'd have to think about it more. I can't, figure out off the spot if I could, get behind those things being not physical too. But I think when we look at our mental states, we can say that, they're very difficult to describe using physical language. Physical states, obviously, we can describe usually using that kind of language.
Yeah.
Mental states, you have a special way of knowing it that others don't. Physical states are not like that. They're publicly accessible. Anybody can know about it in the same way. And just for time's sake, I won't ask you about others, but philosophers of mind have also drawn attention to the fact that mental states have a certain conscious feel to them. Like there's a what it is like to eat a pancake, and there's a what it is like to get slapped in the face, right? And those what it is likes are different.
Or like how
feel to it.
Yeah, we can imagine like licking a wall. Like you can imagine what that would feel like.
Yeah, exactly. But physical states, like being a wall, don't have a what it is like to them. Similarly, mental states seem like they have to be owned by somebody.
Okay.
Right? Like that thought you can have, but that mental state can't just, exist outside of a person, outside of a subject, right? Whereas physical states like being a wall, it doesn't have to be owned by somebody, right? And lastly, thoughts seem to be, and many mental states seem to be about things, right? Like you were thinking about breakfast. But physical states, like the wall over there, it's not about anything.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can look at all of these differences between mental states and physical states, and I think come to the conclusion that ultimately they're not one and the same thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, our mental states aren't identical to whatever our brain states are that are correlated with it. They're definitely connected, they're definitely correlated, but they're different realities.
Okay, yeah, I can see
Is that fair?
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that? I understand if you're kind of skeptical, you think about it more.
Yeah, I would say probably like our mental states, they're constructed in our heads. Like I said before, based off our whatever neural signaling there is. But that is, like you said, it's outside the physical world. It's not something that everyone can experience collectively. It's everyone has their own ideas, their own thoughts.
Got special access, right?
And they don't have what's it called? They're not tangible, obviously, but you can't, like you said, what was it? Like you can only think about them, but you can't actually. What was the thing you said? You can think about something, but you can't actually, like, that's different from the actual like thing itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like our mental states, they don't have the same kind of physical characteristics that most physical states have, or many physical states have, right? Yeah. So when you look at all those differences, I think you can conclude that our mental states or conscious states are not physical, that they can't be ultimately one and the same thing as our brain states, which is a pretty incredible conclusion. I think it means that there is more to reality than just the physical world, than just the stuff that can be studied by physics and chemistry, things that might be described in terms of matter or energy or laws of nature.
Yeah,
right?
I guess, I would say our perceptions definitely, you can try to describe them using hard sciences, like material sciences, but there's some things that is kind of beyond the scope right now. Like we can't really, we can try our best. We can study the brain as much as we can, but there's some things that are kind of outside the scope of what we're able to know right now.
Yeah, it's definitely true, man. And I think you might be able to say, and maybe disagree with this, that there are some things that are outside the scope of what science, in terms of studying the physical world, will ever be able to fully describe. Because I think science is going to continue to open up our understanding of the way the brain works, right? And we might be able to better understand, what kind of brain states are correlated with which mental states. But I think, just by looking inside and considering what our mental states are like, we know that there's many, many differences between mental states and physical states.
Yeah.
And that's something that just studying the brain is not going to overcome, right?
Yeah,
we'll have a better
hard.
understanding of the physical states, but that doesn't change the fact that our conscious states aren't physical, right?
It's hard to
you
imagine.
See what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm describing that well.
I see what you're saying. It'd be hard to imagine right now, to actually have a true understanding of our consciousness based off our current tools. But at the same time, if we go back 100 years, 200 years, and see how much progress we've made, at that point we wouldn't have been able to imagine. At that point in time, we wouldn't be able to imagine what we've discovered now. So I'm sure I'm still a little hopeful that that innovation will actually, even though we can't imagine it now, that we'd ever be able to discover something like that deep or that monumental. I'm still open to the idea that we might actually be able to develop technology that could understand consciousness. Because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
like back then we wouldn't have ever known how far we could get with science. So I'm still open to the possibility.
Okay. So for you, then you would say there are many things that we know now from science that we could never have imagined, 100 years ago, a few hundred years ago, and maybe it'll be the same with consciousness. We give it a few hundred years, and we'll be able to understand it in physical terms, even though right now that seems very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I definitely see what you're saying. For what it's worth, I mean, I think that when you contemplate and kind of look inside and consider what your mental states are like, all of those differences that we talked about, not being describable using physical language very well, having a what it is like to it that physical states don't have, having an aboutness to them that physical states don't have, being privately accessible whereas physical states are publicly accessible, like some of those other differences that we talked about. I don't know if I hit on all of those. I think when you recognize that these are the features of our mental states, I think you can safely say that science will certainly progress in our knowledge of physical states.
Yeah.
But these seem to be clearly non-physical states that we're dealing with. We're talking about our thoughts and our beliefs and our desires and our sensations. And so I think you can safely conclude that science isn't going to, we're not going to get a scientific, we're not going to be able to explain all this just in purely physical terms, I think. At least. Maybe you can understand, even if you disagree.
I see exactly what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. For me, it's a hard maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I'll take that. I can concede. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I understand I understand what you're saying. I'm maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Well,
I mean, there's so many things in science that we don't know. We don't know. We don't have a unified theory of how the universe started. We have because we know we know different things I can't think of it. No, we have I know the Big Bang. I'm trying to think of the different types of energy basically that started the universe. We don't know where we don't have a one single point of where everything started. We only have I forgot the six fundamental forces of the universe. I forgot electromagnetic forces,
strong force, weak force,
the nuclear forces. Yeah, I can't. but we don't have like one unified theory of like what came before that yet, and it's like something that physics is trying to understand right now.
Yeah.
So like in the same way, it's like it's so outside of our perception that we just might not know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean,
and, you know, and to your point, like if we never discover it, like ever, then I guess you could say that science might not be able to find like a physical location for consciousness. So it might literally be outside of our scope for a long time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah. For me, it's like never say never, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like never say that we will never be able to do something. I think maybe, but like it's hard to imagine right now.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I guess the reason why I would say never is because I think there's pretty good reasons right now to conclude that mental states aren't physical, aren't physical states.
Yeah.
And if we're defining science in terms of, the investigation of the physical world, using the empirical method, then that's something that is just going to be inaccessible, to science.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you're standing in the sun, man, so I'll wrap this conversation up for you. Where this comes back to theology or religion, I was telling you, the show's called Theology in Public, because a lot of these questions I think often do have religious implications or come back to people's religious beliefs.